You have reached the Geek Elite. Good luck.
I know what you're thinking. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Well, to tell you the truth, in all this excitement, I've kind of lost track myself. But being this is a 44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and would blow your head clean off, you've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
All right, Rich, we are doing the third part to the massive crossover event with the Certain POV Network of Zack Snyder's Justice League. I mean, if you haven't listened to the first 2 parts at this point, you've messed up. So you need to go back. You need to listen to the Real Movie Guy versus the Cynic. Nope, I messed that one up. The Real Movie Critic versus the Cine-Guy on the Certain POV Network. And then go over to We Have Issues here on the Geek Elite Media Network. And now you're with the Mitch and Rich show. And soon you'll be with Men of Steel.
So here's what we got to do though. So I know we're breaking all of these up in parts for the podcast, and that's awesome. But someone needs to put a 4 hour and 2 minute recording of all this together, and then you can watch it with the Snyder cut as like our commentary. So it'd be like super mega crossover commentary to the movie in real time while you're watching it. That would be the way to go.
If that happens, I just might watch it again for the 3rd time, and then that's it.
Yeah, I would want to do a proper riff track, so this would require a $70 million investment for us to all sit down with a big bag of edibles and like some beverages, and like maybe buffalo wings. Like, could we get like I don't know, like platters for each of us?
Nachos, please.
Pizza.
Nachos. I need nachos.
And nachos. Yeah, absolutely. And then we can all just enjoy the Snyder cut. And mostly just talk to each other and be like, oh, is this still going on? Oh, I guess it's still going on.
Yay,
obviously,
Cyber.
the way that Zack Snyder had intended it all along. Let's get into introducing everybody first, though. You heard a second ago was Case Aiken from the Men of Steel podcast.
Hi, I'm Case. I have terrible podcast etiquette.
Also, his partner, J. Mike.
Hello, I am also part of the Men of Steel podcast.
And the podcast that I screwed up already, The Real Movie Critic.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Hans Martin Jr. in the flesh.
Yeah, I'm Steven.
And the Cine-Guy. Oh,
sorry.
Dang it, Steven! Always messing up, man.
Not my fault. That was like, that was a transition for us, too,
Let him talk. Let him talk.
Sorry. Go ahead, Mitch.
And the Cine-Guy.
Hello, I'm Steven Go, the Cine-Guy. You like my shirt? Now you hate it, I know.
And the 2 hosts from the newest podcast on the Geek Elite Media Network, We Have Issues, Keith.
Hey, guys. Keith from We Have Issues. Excited to be here with y'all. This has been a lot of fun so far.
And Josue.
Hey, Josue here. How's everybody doing?
And they definitely have issues.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They have issues with the Snyder Cut.
Yeah, I have issues with the Snyder Cut.
Rich, before we get into a bigger conversation first, I wanted to ask you, what about this cinematically, sorry, like, did you find that was maybe good or bad?
Wow, that is a good question. Well, we talked a little bit about it on the previous part of it, and I just think from like a filmmaking standpoint, especially if you're someone who's into cinema, like it's really interesting to be able to get the chance to actually watch kind of 2 very different takes in a way, right? It's still fundamentally like the same movie, which is kind of weird. But like the tonality and everything is just completely different from like the color usage, the editing, of course, because one's half the time that the other one is. But I don't know. Like I definitely think there's elements to each of them that work, but fundamentally, I personally like the visual aesthetics of the Snyder Cut better. But that's just me. Like when I think of DC, which I'll be clear, like I'm not the biggest comic book person. Like I have a familiar knowledge of them, but like I don't have an intimate knowledge of them, if you will, right? So for me, like, I kind of prefer the darker tonality when it comes to DC, because that's just, for some reason, where my mind with it goes. Then when I think of Marvel, it's traditionally very bright and vibrant and that in my mind, but that's probably just my ignorance more than anything. So there's that, and then I think, interestingly, from a cinematic standpoint too, there's moments in each movie when you watch them both that you're like, oh, this feels like Whedon. And then there's stuff that you, like the Cyborg scene, right? The football scene for Cyborg. That is so overtly Zack Snyder, like, that you're like, wow. And so just those little things. And even the moment where, the Wonder Woman moment where the terrorists are going in, like the music selections and choices that were done, like, I think the Snyder version of that scene goes on for far too long, but the musical choice that accompanies it is so much more dramatic to me, whereas like the Whedon one almost feels a little bit more like, oh, we're gonna go in here and kill people, you know? Like, so I don't know, it's just like really fascinating from all of those things. But again, I really don't think one of them is necessarily better than the other. I think a lot of it's just going to depend on what you're looking for in terms of the aesthetic and how much time you want to invest into watching a Justice League movie, right?
So one of the things I find interesting is that in all the on-set photos that you see of Zack Snyder in this for this movie, he's usually the one that's behind the camera himself, right? He's looking through the lens, he's doing all this shit. But there is a on-record cinematographer for this. This is Fabian Wagner. Looking at his filmography, it's a lot of television. He's got a lot of Game of Thrones episodes. He's got Da Vinci's Demons. He's got White Queen, Sherlock, a whole bunch. Is there anything about this style in filming that particularly stuck out for you?
I don't think there's necessarily anything. It's not like it doesn't necessarily feel like a TV show or anything like that. And I mean, you talk about the on-set photos and it's like, yeah, of course there's going to be photos of Snyder behind a camera, right? Like, but I mean, that's the great mark of any cinematographer, is to capture the director's vision through the lens of the camera, right? Like, that really is fundamentally their job. And if you work with a director that allows for pretty heavy collaboration, you might have some more freedom to kind of do what you think is best artistically or creatively for the story's vision, right? But fundamentally, their job is there to capture through the lens the director's story, right? Again, the biggest thing that I could just keep going back to is just watching the two of them together, and it's more of the post work that's done to that capturing, right? Because cinematically, they're using a lot of the same footage. Snyder obviously doubled that amount of footage, right? Which allegedly a lot of that was shot previous, just wasn't used. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't think we'll ever know if that's completely true. But I think it's captured very well. I mean, I think it's what you would expect cinematically to see from a very high-end, very high-budgeted film, right? But again, you know, the camera angles and the choices that are used, I think, placate well to visually what they're trying to accomplish. Like, I don't think nothing felt out of sorts for me in terms of the cinematography. I just think it's more interesting to see how that cinematography was then used on the post end to really alter and manipulate, like, the viewer's mood and the world and the vibe and all that sort of stuff. That's what I found to be the most interesting of all of it, you know?
Anybody else have any thoughts on the cinematography in general?
Why does Snyder like slow-mo? That's my question. Like, I know that's his thing, but that doesn't mean he has to do it all the time. Like, seriously.
Yes, it does.
I think he thinks it builds tension. Like, to me, that's the only thing that could possibly be what it is. Because if you go back to 300, like the scene of Leonidas coming in and taking out all those guys with just his sword one by one, it's like, is he going to eventually get hit, or is he going to make it all the way to the king god? I forget what his name was.
Oh, Xerxes.
Xerxes,
yeah. Artaxerxes, yeah.
I think that the slow down, speed up element was a choice made with 300 and has continued through all of his like comic book adaptations in particular, because it works very well to try to capture panels. Like 300, unlike all of these other ones, was a direct adaptation of a work, and a lot of those like points where the slowdown occurred was exactly the moments where we got the panel in the comic that was put out by Frank Miller. and that was responded to very well. That's probably the thing people praised the most about 300. And so when you get into the later movies, like there's some of it in Man of Steel. Most of that could be argued to be like super speed stuff, but like I think it's a bigger issue with Batman vs Superman and with this, where it's like, where are the frames that people are going to find really cinematic and beautiful that like you could capture and say, look how gorgeous this shot was. Like Wonder Woman throwing the explosion, and it's like this very long slow-mo of it like rising up in the air. It looks really good. Like the movie isn't like, I don't know if it's paced well, but like if you're just saying, is that a good looking frame? It's a good looking frame.
Yeah,
completely unnecessary.
Well, but I would agree with you. Like, I think if those moments had been really selectively dialed in, I think it would have had a much more impact. Because I agree with you. Like, when I compared it to the 2017 version, and she kind of just jumps up and throws the bomb out the window and it goes off, it's not nearly as like grandiose cinematic as her flying up through the air and like launching this thing. But then, in contrast to that, you get the shot of Aquaman walking down the pier, littering the ocean with this glass bottle that he just drank and smashes it. And then you get the Leonidas shot again of this, like, you know, giant tsunami coming in, and it's just a close-up of his face in slow-mo with water splashing on him. That's where you're like, okay, that moment didn't necessarily need to be there. Like, sure, visually it looks cool, but it doesn't have the same kind of like gravitas as the Wonder Woman one does. So I think like if you have those moments and they would have been, I guess, more methodically picked, I definitely would agree with you that is a strong reason to do that, is to build that moment of where you're capturing kind of that very cinematic comic book transitional frame thing, and you're like saying, hey, and I don't know if it necessarily builds tension, but I think it does kind of, when utilized correctly and in conservative natures, I think it draws you in that moment a little bit more, because you're like, oh, wow, because everything else has been so like, oh, we're shooting, we're blowing up, we're doing all this, and then it's like this moment of just standing still really does kind of make you dial in, if it's not done every other minute, right? Like, I think that's the problem, is it's so heavy-handed in this that it does start detracting from those moments where you're like, oh, that was a good moment.
It seems like you should have saved it for all the Flash scenes, to be quite honest. And they did add one where it reminded me so much of X-Men Days of Future Past with Quicksilver, where how they introduced Flash and how he saved that one girl from that accident. And I just couldn't help but shake to think like, okay, so you're copying from X-Men now and things. But this is where I think slow-mo makes sense at the same time, all right? And maybe Snyder should have saved those scenes for that. Maybe he should have directed the Flash movie instead of this. But anyway,
yeah, that would be a natural movie for Snyder, where it's just like everything is speed up, slow down. Like, okay,
it would have made more sense, you know, just for the Flash scenes alone. You know, I think that would have made more sense instead of having 5 minutes of seeing Wonder Woman throw a bomb in the air. But anyway.
Right, but also just to, like, the counterbalance in the Quicksilver is that like the WB, or pardon me, the CW version of the Flash has like had those kind of scenes too. Like if you're illustrating slow mo, or like rather super speedsters, having everyone else in slow mo is a common way of showing it.
I think if we're talking about Zack Snyder's slow mo, you mentioned 300. I think it's a good comparison, because with 300, I thought it was done really well. But if you look at the shots in 300 that are slow mode, they're very cinematic. They could almost be a painting on a wall. Whereas Wonder Woman going like this and a bomb in her head, that's not a painting on a wall like that. And so to compare it to Thor Ragnarok, think about all the awesome landscape shots that were slow mode just to give you a moment to appreciate it. Like all the scenes on the Rainbow Bridge and everything like that. Like, it was done specifically that way in slow mo to give the audience a chance to digest every bit of it and really appreciate it. Whereas this, it was just done to be done. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
No, but that's what I mean. It does feel really heavy-handed, because even going back to that Flash sequence, like, it gets really creepy, because he just met this girl, and she's flying through the air about to die, and he takes time to, like, brush her hair out of her face and then run his hand down her face, and I'm like, that's really creepy, dude.
A little too much.
Oh, and steal a hot dog, which I couldn't help but think was kind of phallic in nature.
Yes.
I also want to say I'm glad Keith and Josue are here because not only do they do the We Have Issues podcast, they also do the Jukebox Vertigo podcast. So I want to talk about the music in this because I know nothing about music. We originally had in the 2017 version big composer. It's always in all the superhero stuff, especially Batman.
Hans Zimmer?
No.
Danny Elfman.
Danny Elfman, thank you.
Love me some Danny Elfman.
So Danny Elfman in that one, we have Junkie XL returning for this one. Like, what are the differences here? Because, and I'm being completely honest, I don't know the differences because I don't pay attention to that.
So, I'm the one that hosts Jukebox Vertigo. It's super fun. Check it out. So the music in this one definitely changed. Like we were talking about the Scandinavian girl who just lets it riff for like ever. I would have if it wasn't on for that long, I would have appreciated some like subtitles to maybe understand what was being sung, to see what was she like singing out to him, but then she goes and sniffs it. But then
I think the sniffing definitely tells you what she was singing. She's like, "Hey, I really love you. You're walking away from me."
Right.
I want you to steal a hot dog while I'm suspended in midair.
That's right.
But then the next one with Aquaman, the one that really changed, and I guess it really changed because it would have been too mainstream. But at the same time, what bugs me about Snyder is that I feel like he just has to be deliberately on the nose with "There's My Kingdom, There's My King" song with Aquaman. I would have just straight up just taken Icky Thump again, just to get the feel of Aquaman and just like more fun, just like maybe wake me up just at some point in the movie. But damn, does he just have to be so on the nose with that song and that part, just him staring out into the sea, and then just we get the sequence of him going out to his kingdom. Way to go, we got it, Zack Snyder.
on the nose is the best description, and that's not just a Zack Snyder problem; that's a DC problem. Suicide Squad is the worst example of that.
Ooh.
Every song is it's literally a song telling you what's happening on screen every time a song plays. And it really bothers me. As far as this one goes, to be frank, I hated the score for the first third of the movie because it was all really slow. Yeah. Like there was no change of pace. It was just dreary. And about the time the flash sequence happened, and they slow-mode, and it was another dreary song. Like, it can be a slow song, but it can be, like, a fun, slow song, you know? But it was just, again, really dreary. And after that, I honestly tuned out the music. I couldn't really pay attention to it at that point. It was just bothering me, so... Yeah.
Anybody else have thoughts?
Yeah, like, I'm glad you brought up music, because I was thinking about this, where the first one had a lot of needle drops. Like, where it's like, here's the actual popular song, and we're just going to play it right now, because it's the song that we were thinking about when we shot the scene, or a song that felt right when we were like in the editing suite. And this movie has, you know, even where it has like popular songs, they're covers, and there's like a lot going on to try to be this sort of like overly epic kind of orchestral version of all that. The score that we got in this movie is not the one that we would have gotten in 2017, even if Snyder had been on the entire time, because like this is a problem DC was dealing with, and why the Suicide Squad is so rough is because they like overly inserted music drops. Because at the time when this movie came out, and especially when Suicide Squad came out, like they were fighting with Guardians of the Galaxy. Like that was the movie that they were competing against. Like we weren't at Infinity War yet. It was like, all right, let's do, you know, let's do what's super popular at the moment. And like between the Guardians of the Galaxy movie and like Thor Ragnarok, like it was all like, yeah, let's have popular songs that will evoke emotions in as easy a digest format as possible. Yeah. And I felt it was like way too much in Suicide Squad because it was just like every scene had a new song and it was all popular and it always was weird. And I felt like Justice League was in the same ballpark. It was a little less bad, but it was still in the same ballpark. And then this one is a whole new score, and I thought it was like fine. Like I think it did its job. But they also were deliberately avoiding all the needle drops. Like they didn't have the budget to do it again, and two, they were trying to be different than the first one.
Yeah. Well, I think the Guardians shout makes a lot of sense, because when they're making Suicide Squad, I remember an interview with James Gunn where he's talking about him and David Ayer were actually emailing each other, being like, "Hey, I'm using this song, so you probably shouldn't use it." Like they both knew what was happening, like with that, so they had to keep track of who was using what songs and stuff. So I think that's really, and you think at how well Guardians did it, and how not great Suicide Squad did it, and it's just, you know, They have the same palette, just using it appropriately, you know.
Yeah, it would have worked if Cyborg was always logged into Spotify throughout. And he was just like, you just go into like Cyborg Headspace, and he like on his his heads up display, he just like hits play, and then like scene starts.
That's a Justice League thing. I'm sorry.
Well, it's not, because like Justice League didn't spend as much time in Cyborg's head either.
No. Oh, that's true too. Touche. Yeah. But
J. Mike, were you about to say something?
I was like, I just feel like this one, like there is times for like music in there. There's times for like for the music to come in, for a score to come in, and for like ambient music to be in the background. This one, there's just music like all the time. There's always something playing in the background, and it's like it gets to be overbearing for a lot of the scenes to me sometimes. It's like you'll be having like this meaningful scene, and then like the music just starts playing in the background. You're like, okay, that's kind of uncalled for. Or they'll be talking, and there's more music, and you're like, oh, okay, we got it the first time, great. And it just keeps coming the entire movie.
My thing is, are they overdoing it with the Wonder Woman guitar riff, which I believe is from Junkie XL?
The hi-yas are just like, oh, anything she do.
I loved it the first time we saw it or heard it in Batman v Superman, but like it plays 4 or 5 times in this one, and every time she's like on screen, it's like, come on.
Well, and also when the Amazons are on screen, and I appreciated the attempt to make it look like it was diegetic when like Hippolyta was shooting off the arrow, and they've got like Amazon drummers like trying to like go in the same beat as like the song.
Yeah, it's really not that subtle of a song, and it is starting to get annoying. Yeah.
I wanted to bring up that arrow shooting scene.
Mm-hmm.
So in this new version, the idea is that if, for whatever reason, the Amazons who have been imprisoned or pushed to this island by the world of man, they can shoot an arrow into the Parthenon, right? And that will set a fire, and then that particular arrow will also be the only thing that can open up a secret room that is underneath the Parthenon that has the whole story of Darkseid on it. No one's found it since then, and it's only the people that have this arrow, which is the people who are on this island, can tell it to anybody else. Like, in the 2017 version, it's just the arrow, and she's like, oh, that reminds me. An invasion is coming, and I know this story from when I was a child, kind of thing. This is, she has to sneak in, she has to take the arrow from, the only 2 cops that are there, because a big old thing like this happens and only 2 cops are there, place it into a certain holder, and the story is there for her to read. That as a story, that doesn't make any sense to me.
See, I didn't take that as it being actually underneath the Parthenon. I took it as being she went into Tartarus and there was like a realm. Like, I took it that she stepped away from our reality. It seemed very shadowy and like it's subterranean, but it seemed underworldly.
No, you're right. It's almost like she respawned somewhere else.
Yeah.
And she did it in heels. She did all that in heels.
No, I was going to bring up the heels. She fell like hundreds of feet and landed, and those heels didn't shatter on impact. So
they're made from Amazonians.
my issue with it is she's from Themyscira, right? So the implication is that she didn't know the story of Darkseid, I guess. But then, did she ever ask why 50 of her fellow Amazonians had to stand guard over a box every day?
Well, she never met them. They're always at the they never leave.
Like, I was just kind of like, that seems weird. That I don't know. That just seems like a weird way to do it. And it was more like to tell the audience what's going on. But
this is an ongoing problem, though, with like the current DC EU with Wonder Woman or with Amazonian society in general. Like, they don't really assume that they have one. They're like, yeah, they're warriors, right? Yeah, and like even this, like the mother box that they protect should have been like the thing their society is built around, like just protecting this fucking thing, and it's not. But instead they're just like, we always train for battle. Who knows when it'll happen? I don't know. More games, more training, train more, like.
I mean, they get to live forever, so they should train forever, I guess.
Well, like, compare it, like, we got to compare it with, like, a lot of, like, other interpretations of Wonder Woman on Men of Steel when we did the like lead up to Wonder Woman 84. And it was interesting looking at the Linda Carter series, where there's a vibe that there's artistry, that there are scholars, that there's like all walks of people living on the island. And I don't know why, but like modern people just can't perceive a reality of Amazons where they have more than one thing.
Yeah. We did get a brief shot of some Amazonians or some Themyscirians in like peasant clothes, which I thought was weird. That was the first time we saw Amazons not like full out in armor. They were like in like cloth and stuff, and I was kind of like, is that like the serpent cast of Themyscira? I was like, what's going on here?
I felt like that was the younger kids, or not kids, but younger women that were just like they have to do that part before they can go on to training. It's different than Wonder Woman herself, who got to train from birth, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
But yeah, that's how I got from that. I also wanted to bring up, and this is the thing that Rich and I talk about a lot on the show when talking about movies. I felt like this movie, with it being as long as it is and as much as footage as they shot, they broke the rule of telling and not showing often. Like, we got a lot of parts where people were just explaining things where I was like, well, why didn't I get to see that? Like, that's something that would have been good to have been filmed.
I got one.
Okay.
The part where we have this giant, cool, pretty entertaining battle sequence, and then at the end, when the tunnel is getting drowned out, and Aquaman finally comes in to join the team, and they're struggling, and Cyborg just dips. And like, oh shit, what an asshole. And then it's always, oh shit, he went to go get the mother box because he figured it out. But then we just cut to, everybody's just out of there. Nobody, like, how did they get out of the situation from not drowning, you know? Because, Flash was still hurt. We were talking about that healing factor. But yeah, it just cuts to, and it's like, there's so much time to tell everything. Why not this one? Why not actually finish that battle sequence?
Did anybody else have an example of that? Did anybody else feel that way? Or am I, Josue and myself, the only ones that felt that way?
I mean, pacing was weird in general. Like, some scenes, like, those are good examples of scenes that cut off too early, and other scenes, like, went too long. Like, it's just an issue that was going on here. Trying to think if there's another good example like that where they didn't spend enough time with the characters.
Oh, I mean, I feel if I was like to go back and watch it again, because like I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't have like a great example off the top of my head, but there is so much expositional dialogue that is completely like, okay, like can't we just, couldn't we just see that? Yeah, but I know exactly what you're talking about, but I'm having a hard time of like thinking like. There's so much movie to try to like siphon back through it all and be like, okay, well, where was this part at? But yeah, there's definitely a lot of heavy-handed exposition.
It was really prevalent with Diana, with Wonder Woman. She was just an exposition machine at times where they're like, what's going on? And then Wonder Woman explains the plot of the movie to us again. Like, and I was like, oh, yeah, okay. And I don't know, that felt really forced and awful. And a waste of Gal Gadot.
I also feel like there was a part with Alfred doing it too. Like he comes in and he's like, "No, you can't do that," and probably explaining things about Barry and Cyborg. But I remember Alfred being part of it for one of the ones that I saw. But I guess I should have thought about that more before bringing it up.
Yeah, I think the thing is that they just have every scene that they could think to put in this movie, and so like when you were doing the 2-hour cut, if you were taking this and chopping it down, you'd only pick one of them, and they've got all of them, and like you'd pick the one that's like more exposition if they don't have time for the longer, more like kind of showy kind of scenes, like the mother box stuff getting explained in the flashback. You don't actually need that scene. Like, it's nice to have, but like you could, like they tell you enough times what the deal with the mother box is. It's just like they have all these different versions, and rather than pick the one that's best to tell the movie, they just like have them all.
Mm-hmm. While we're on the topic of mother boxes, there's this scene where everyone like has these giant like fortresses and locks and keys, or they put their mother boxes on like a heavy guard, and the humans are like, here's a hole in the ground. They're like looking at it like, that'll be fine.
Because humans are stupid. That's why.
I was like, what? I was like, what?
However, the human one is the one that takes the longest to find.
Right.
Like,
yeah, because people keep finding him and keeping it.
Well,
Not
also,
only that, but the other thing that's hilarious about that, okay, two things. One, when the mother box awoke in with the Amazons, why didn't they just effing move it then? Why didn't they take one person and just be like, you get on a horse and go now? They waited like 5 days. They're like, nothing's happened for a week, my queen. And she was like, why didn't you move it a week ago?
Seriously.
And then,
That scene is way better. Like that was probably the one where I was like, man, this is actually like substantially better than the theatrical cut, because the theatrical cut, it's just like, oh shit, I just woke up, and then boom, Steppenwolf shows up, and it's like, I'm taking it. No, you ain't. And no, I am. And he does. Like that. Like, they actually, all the Amazons fight him. It felt appropriate. That's when the fucking parademons show up for the first time, as opposed to the theatrical cut, which, man, we haven't talked about this part. The parademons are just there at the start of the movie. And I'm like, it never explained how. At least, like, now they show up as part of Steppenwolf first arriving, and we see him first arriving. So that's like, those are good choices. I don't know. Again, like, it's so weird that they don't find a better way to tie in Superman with it all. Like, it's just like, oh, he's so scary that, like, the mother boxes were afraid. They were scared of him. He's big and he's mean. He's a mean Man of Steel.
He's mopey.
So Darkseid shouldn't come here because he's mean. like, oh, he's dead. I guess we can wake up again and welcome our death god.
for the record,
the other thing I was going to say, though, to kind of go along with what J-Mike's saying is, yes, it's really stupid that people buried them, right? But then Cyborg, they're talking about how intelligent he is and all this stuff. He knows that somebody dug this shit up, and he goes and buries it again at his own grave. I'm like, what?
After keeping it in his closet. So that is a step up.
closet!
That is a step up.
Right.
well, the Amazonian secure vault had a skylight, guys.
Yeah,
Like,
it sure did.
and I was like, and we were watching it because my roommate had watched that part before me, and I'm sitting there being like, why has it got a skylight? She's like, you'll know in a moment. And then he boom tubed in, and she's like, he wouldn't be able to boom tube in if there wasn't a skylight. I was like,
Yes, he can. Like,
I was like,
later.
yeah.
I like that when Cyborg had it in his room, clutching it, and the parademon was like just a wall away. The parademon was like, "Oh shit, I got found out." I gotta see it.
I was gonna say that in both versions, Steppenwolf getting the box in Atlantis was pretty easy. Both times. I don't know what's up with Atlantis not protecting it very well. But
British Mira put up a better fight in this one.
barely.
Also,
You want to talk about that, Axel?
also, did in the theatrical cut, were they able to talk underwater? Or did
No.
they have to use
No.
they had to use a
No.
bubble?
They had to
need the
open up the
bubble thing.
bubbles.
Yeah,
It wasn't
which
until
surprised me
Aquaman
so
when they were
much,
like,
because like then they do the bubble for them to have a conversation. And I was like, I was convinced that was a Whedon choice, so that they could have the scene.
But like he also had
I think
like,
it was a James Wan choice.
the Aquaman movie to go off of, so I was like, why not just go ahead and like use that going forward? And I was like, okay,
no, they
cool.
hadn't had the Aquaman movie yet.
That is the interesting thing. Like, this movie ties in better to Aquaman. Like, it actually fits a lot better, aside from Aquaman having literally the exact same arc in this movie and in Aquaman. In this movie, he takes up his mother's trident and also puts on the armor for the first time to lead his people, or to be a champion of his people. In Aquaman, he takes up his ancestral trident and puts on the armor for the first time to become the true king of his people. Like, it's the exact same plot for him in two movies.
I mean, there's not a lot of plot for Aquaman in general in all the comic books. So
Yes, there is. He has to take his shirt off in every scene somehow.
Yeah.
Every
We got more
single
William
scene.
Dafoe, too.
Yes, we did. I forgot he was in the movie.
so different.
He looked terrible.
He looked dead.
He looked like Steven Tyler, but older.
Oh, jeez.
But I appreciated his presence. That actually makes it feel connected
Yeah.
to the world. Whereas, like, it doesn't feel connected to, like, Wonder Woman 84, which, sure, came so much later, but also, like, came out before this movie came out.
In the timeline, yeah, she learns to fly in 1984, but yet doesn't do it here.
Right.
Let alone that he couldn't make the spaceship disappear like he did in 84 with some kind of magic or something. I mean, that could have helped.
We can't see through this barrier. Hang on, let me do a thing.
Okay, so I've been teasing it for the last two parts. I need to talk about the Martian Manhunter now. How is it that, one, you're going to give this big ol' speech to the Martha Kent character, where you actually make her sound great. She's telling her at one point could have been like daughter-in-law, be like, hey, look, I loved him too, but you got to move on, kind of thing. Like you need to live in the world. We need you. And then totally take that away from Martha Kent and be like, nah, that was the Martian Manhunter, and the whole time. Which then
that right before he went and knocked on the door, he was just like, look good, feel good. Let's just feel good. That's the best performance of my life. Let's do
he's
this.
like, I'm a big shining bright star.
This is my example of a decision that they made based on fan reactions that were bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a waste. This is a waste of Martian Manhunter. It doesn't make any sense. All of the scenes are bad, and the reason why they did it was because Snyder mentioned that in his headcanon, in Man of Steel, that general was Martian Manhunter secretly
the whole time.
It didn't make sense then because we were all like, wait, so when they were going to turn the world into Krypton and kill everyone on the planet, you were like, well, my planet, which is nothing like Krypton, in the opposite direction from Earth. Like, if Krypton is bigger and has a redder sun, Mars is not in that direction. And, they're like, all right, well, you know what, we're going to let it fly on this one. Then we're going to have an even bigger threat that he apparently knows something about, because he's just in play. They're going to just have him not be a player? Like, that scene with Martha, or as Martha, I should say, is not a good scene. Or rather, it's a fine scene with Martha. It's terrible that it's given to then Jean. It worked fine in the Whedonverse or the Justice League cut where they're at work and she's there. Yeah. There's a weird detail of how fast did Martha get back to Smallville, which was the only kind of problem there. But it was a perfectly fine scene there. It's a perfectly fine scene here. But it then is how the fuck would he even know to say those things? Unless he was reading both of their minds. Not just... Because, you could say that he wouldn't make a mistake that Lois Lane would catch because he would be telepathic. But he said the right folksy wisdom to, have a meaningful thing there. And then at the end of the fucking movie, he's just, he shows up and he's like, Darkseid, who I'm very familiar with, he's not going to be, swayed so easily. By the way, folks to call me the Martian Manhunter.
I care now. Now I care.
Right. But right. If he was an active participant, different story. If anything, different story. If he was asleep and they woke him up, different story. If he was buried within the mind of someone who Darkseid was torturing, or Steppenwolf was torturing, different story. But he's entirely a passive observer, but they indicate just how fucking powerful he is.
Yeah. For those who read the comic books, you know that the Martian Manhunter has equivalently the powers of everybody on the Justice League. He is just as strong as Aquaman. He's just as intelligent.
Well, wait, let's just get the point out. He's Superman, but with more powers, but a worse weakness.
Yeah, exactly.
I was hoping that somebody would open the door with a candlelight, and he's like, "Oh no, fire!" steps away or something. That would have been kind of funny.
And I could understand it if they did the thing that they did in that New Frontier animated, where he's like, "I live on the outside. I observe. I don't interact. Kind of thing." I'm being passive, but the identity that he's taken on in these movies is a general that fights wars. Mm-hmm. You're not being passive then, so there's no reason for him not to have become part of the Justice League.
Oh, God. Or keep your cover, but be a military aide in this situation, where it's all of a sudden the U.S. military shows up, which might be a bit jingoistic, but fuck it, it's the Justice League of America, and all of a sudden have Martian Manhunter be talking to Batman, be like, by the way, your reinforcements are here, and reveal that he's actually in a high up position or something like that, and in a psychic conversation. Why did he even show up to Batman? From a power standpoint, he doesn't need to go there. He could have just mind put himself there.
Obviously, I'm not going to rip on it that he kind of distinctly looks like Piccolo from Dragon Ball.
I said the same thing on Twitter. I said the same thing on Twitter. Like they gave him I mean, it's Piccolo, it's Toriyama in general, but it's got the weird ridge kind of elements to him in design. Yeah. And then the worst goddamn Snyder choice of being we're gonna have glowing, burning fire cross on his chest, everyone, the Kryptonians, the New Gods, the Martians, they all have the same. This is what aliens look like design language to them, and that's annoying.
Almost looks like a scroll. Almost.
Yeah.
Almost.
I can live with that.
Nah, it wouldn't be fair. No.
Just the to me that's one of the biggest grievances because to me Martian Manhunter, and I know in the most recent versions of the Justice League, Martian Manhunter is the heart of the Justice League. He's the one that keeps them together and is always a part of the Justice League. So to have him play such a secondary part to the whole movie, it barely be in there, and then have these little things where he shows up, it made me more upset than anything else.
Let me throw out a name that I think kind of will influence some of this discussion. Jeff Johns.
Yes.
Yes. We were talking earlier about how Cyborg is the sixth member of this team because of the New 52 reboot. Likewise, Martian Manhunter's not there because of the New 52 reboot. There is a perspective of who's important, and that's if you were a fan of the 1980s Superpowers cartoon, that's your Justice League roster. Minus Firestorm.
Or going into Cyborg a little bit when they're infiltrating and Batman and Wonder Woman are planning out. It's hey, you go left, I go right, and Steppenwolf is holding Victor's dad. It's chokehold, and then Victor, of course, it's his dad, so he just jumps in. But it's just they were just planning it out. Yeah. What a very teen tiny emotion of you to do.
That's very true. That's very true. But my thing is, they're just introducing more characters and still no Green Lantern to join. I swear, if Zatanna joins in before Green Lantern, I'm going to throw something.
They killed them all already. They're all dead.
They're all dead. They're
not all dead. You saw the ring flying around. It's going to somebody. I mean, come on now.
He's dead too.
Yeah.
He's dead too. He died off screen.
Like I said, if Zatanna gets in there before Green Lantern, I'm throwing something, all right? Steven might get
but in the
Snyderverse,
right? the first Green Lantern died by Darkseid's hand, apparently, or Steppenwolf, depending on which version of the story you prefer. Then one fell down dead when a gold mine had a cave-in and all the gold collapsed on top of him. Then another person had a type of yellow fungus get into his bloodstream, and he couldn't do anything about that. And then someone just happened to be stabbed to death with what was a gold letter opener. And each time they just keep on dying.
Does it eventually get to Ebenser? Do we eventually get to Ryan Reynolds?
Right, but he steps on a rust, but it's a weird rust that has a yellow hue to it, rusty nail, and then that gives him tetanus, and then the yellow tetanus is why he dies.
Look, I understand you're throwing all this hate at the Green Lantern, and I don't appreciate it.
I love Green Lanterns in general. I'm not.
We need Green Lantern.
But and just to bring back my point, I don't really love the Jeff Johns era of Green Lantern stuff. I think the Spectrum stuff is fanficky and bad. I think parts of it are okay, but that's just where it is. This Justice League, it's weird that they don't have Green Lantern. The reason they don't have Green Lantern, though, is because the Ryan Reynolds movie was that bad. That movie was supposed to be part of a bigger world. That's why they had Amanda Waller in it. It felt like it was going to be here's a big universe kind of movie, and then it was so bad and so panned that they don't even try to connect it here. So the fact that we got any kind of reference is fine. Martian Manhunter being in this version, which was just fully done from in the reshoots. It wasn't in the original stuff. All of this stuff is just awkward and bad and a waste of a character. And they were trying to be here's more sequel bait in the epilogue amongst all the other epilogue stuff. There's also another superhero out here. Why? Why was it, he could at least be in the Flash or the Flash Forward? Have him matter somewhere.
That would've been cool.
What if he's holding off Superman while they escape? Something. Yeah.
I mean, based on his preferences, if he was just gonna give us an unpleasant reach around for 4 hours, maybe have a dude throw on a Hal jacket and that's it.
Yeah.
There could have been
What if
anything.
Martian Manhunter was commanding the military, and the fighter pilots that were coming in were being led by Captain Jordan?
There you go.
There you go.
That's
or John
something.
Stewart? Like,
There you
you
go,
could
that
have
too.
You could
Good
have,
to me.
Oh yeah, well that's the Marines on the ground.
yeah, you could have had that too.
We've got a base
Okay.
outside that was set up by our captain / architect here, John Stewart.
No,
Look at both of them.
you want to know what we did get though, and this is the last character I wanted to talk about. We get a scientist that is the assistant to Joe Morton's character of Silas Stone. And then at the very end of the movie, like we know that they call him Ryan throughout the whole thing, but at the very end of the movie, a security guard comes up to him with an ID badge. He's like, "Wait, so you're in charge now, right? Ryan Choi, nanotechnology?" And like, it's like this big reveal of who gives a fuck. Like, there's no reason to have this long shot of holding on it. Like, you're Ryan. Like, look, I read comic books, and I haven't even read that many Ryan Choi the Atom books. Like. Who knows about that character?
I mean, I feel like people know the name enough, just in that, like, there was a big push to be like, no, this is the new Adam. And, like, he showed up in, like, the CW stuff also, like, but man, that scene was so heavy-handed. Like, oh, you're master of nanotech stuff. Yep, that's what it says. That's what it says.
Was it worse than the Robin reveal at the end of The Dark Knight Rises?
No.
It can't be quite as bad as that.
No.
because that was
No,
also
it
just,
can't
like,
be worse
very
than that.
bad.
No.
That was
Like,
painful.
we're gonna have you not be named the right thing this whole time, and then like that would be like, well, man, Peter Jack, like, you're really something of a Clark Kent, aren't you? Or something like that.
Or the MJ in Spider-Man: Homecoming, that was pretty bad too.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least the initials work. In that scenario.
True.
All right, that's all that we're going to speak about on this part of the
I got
big
one more
crossover
thing,
event.
which would be that they should have revealed that the graphic designer that Luther hired for his portfolio
go.
of superpowered beings was Kyle Rayner.
I knew it.
and they all meet up at Guy's bar afterwards.
Kyle Rayner's on the run because Lex Luthor's out of prison, and like, who knows about the portfolio of super beings that he put together? Only his graphic designer, who somehow was not already murdered, Kyle Rayner. He's talking to his best buddy Guy, the bartender.
Oh my
Meanwhile, sitting down the bar from him is a black man with glowing green eyes.
There you go. Green Lantern Corps. There you go.
Don't forget the World War II veteran Alan Scott. He's also there. He's like, I'll tell you how I did it in my day, kids.
World War II veteran and TV mogul.
That's right, and TV mogul. You got to throw that in there. So let's go ahead and get a round of where we can find everybody. Steven, where can people find you online?
Already catch me at my YouTube channel at Director Man Prod, where I put on weekly Cine-Guy reviews. Also follow my Instagram page at Cine-Guy Steven for more fun reviews. That is at Cine-Guy Steven. Also, I'm the co-host of the Real Movie Critic vs. Cine-Guy, where you can find at CertainPOV.com, or also on Spotify and iTunes.
And his co-host is...
I am Hans Martin Jr., your Real Movie Critic. You could read my blog at realmoviecritic.com. You could also find me on Facebook at Real Movie Critic. You could also catch me on Twitter and Instagram at RealCritic34. I am the co-host of the Real Movie Critic vs. Cine-Guy, and also our bonus episode, Sparring Screens. Check it out as well.
Josue, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Josue Reads Josue. I also host a show called Jukebox Vertigo. Twitter of the same name at Jukebox Vertigo.
And
Let's say
Keith?
Jerkbox.
Find me on Twitter at WHI Podcast Keith, and our show, me and Josue's show, We Have Issues. We review every week some new comics, way too many comics every week, and that's WHI Podcast, We Have Issues.
J. Mike.
Hey, you can find me on Twitter at JMike101.
There we go.
And Case.
I am Case. I'm one of the hosts of Men of Steel. You can find my stuff at CertainPOV.com, and you can find me online at Case Aiken.
And Richard, where can people find you?
So you can find all my social media on rycohen.com, RICOWN.com.
I am at Mitchipedia, GEM. GEM stands for Geek Elite Media. The rest of Geek Elite Media can be found on Twitter at Geek Elite Media, at Geek Elite Media on Instagram, and Facebook.com/Geek Elite Media is our Facebook page. Check out archived episodes of this podcast and other podcasts on our network on our website, geekelitemedia.com. All right. Everybody's got to sign out with me. All you'd have to do is say, wait, you know what? Continue. The conversation continues over on Men of Steel on the Certain POV Network. So go over there, check out part 4 of the Zack Snyder's Justice League crossover event, and make sure that you rate and review everybody as you listen to these. So, but until next time, this is the Mitch and Rich Show on the Geek Elite Media Network, saying always remember to
geek out.
This concludes our broadcast.